توجہ ہے حدیث کساب حدیث بآواز بلند صلوات دیگر بآواز بلند صلوات نیچے آ رہا نمبر ہو گیا، اب ٹھیک ہو گیا، بس ٹھیک ہو گیا۔ صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرجہم۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ ان فاطمة الزہرا علیہ السلام بنت رسول اللہ انہا قال دخل علی ابی رسول اللہ فی بعض الایام فقال السلام علیک یا فاطمة فقلت علیک السلام قال انی اجد فی بدنی ضعفا فقلت لعوذک باللہ یا ابتاہ من الضعف فقال یا فاطمة ائتنی بالکساء الیمانی فغطینی بہ فاتیتہ بالکساء الیمانی فغطیتہ بہ فصرت وانظروا الہ واذا وجہہ یتلی لہ کانہ البدر فی لیلۃ تمامہ وکمالہ اللہم صلی علی محمد فما كانت الا صوتا واذا بوالدی الحسن قد اقبل وقال السلام علیک یا امہ فقلت وعلیک السلام یا قرۃ عینی وثمرۃ فؤادی فقال یا امہ انی اشم عندک رائحۃ طیبۃ کأنها رائحۃ جد رسول اللہ فقلت نعم ان جدک تحت الکساء فاقبل الحسن نحو الکساء وقال السلام علیک یا جدہ یا رسول اللہ اتاذنونی ان ادخل معک تحت الکساء فقال وعلیک السلام یا والدی و یا صاحب حوضی قد اذنت لک فدخل معه تحت الکساء اللہم صلی علی محمد فما كانت الا صوتا واذا بوالدی الحسین قد اقبل وقال السلام علیک یا امہ فقلت وعلیک السلام یا والدی و یا قرۃ عینی وثمرۃ فؤادی فقال لی یا امہ انی اشم عندک رائحۃ طیبۃ کأنها رائحۃ جد رسول اللہ فقلت نعم ان جدک واخاک تحت الکساء فدنا الحسین نحو الکساء وقال السلام علیک یا جدہ السلام علیک یا من اختارہ اللہ اتاذنونی ان اکون معکما تحت الکساء فقال وعلیک السلام یا ولدی و یا شافع امتی قد اذنت لک فدخل معہما تحت الکساء فاقبل عند ذلك ابو الحسن علی ابن ابی طالب وقال السلام علیک یا بنت رسول اللہ فقلت وعلیک السلام یا ابا الحسن و یا امیر المومنین فقال یا فاطمة انی اشم عندک رائحۃ طیبۃ کأنها رائحۃ اخی وابن ام رسول اللہ فقلت نعم ها هو مع والدک تحت الکساء فاقبل علی نحو الکساء وقال السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ اتاذنونی ان اکون معکم تحت الکساء وقال وعلیک السلام یا اخی و یا وسیعی و خلیفتی و صاحب لوائی قد اذنت لک فدخل علی تحت الکساء ثم اتیت نحو الکساء وقلت السلام علیک یا ابتاہ یا رسول اللہ اتاذنونی ان اکون معکم تحت الکساء فقال وعلیک السلام یا بنتی و یا بضعتی قد اذنت لک فدخلت تحت الکساء فلم اکتملن جمیعا تحت الکساء
أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأمياد الجمنة إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وهامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم أنا هرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن صالمهم وعدو لمن عادهم ومحب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا صلی اللہ محمد وآل محمد فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات إني ما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مزية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا رب ومن تحت الكساء فقال عز وجل وهم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبالها وبنوها اللهم صل على محمد فقال جبرائيل يا رب أتأذنني أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي والجلال إني ما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مزية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذنوا لي يا رسول الله فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وهي الله إنه نام قد أذنت لك فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا محمد وآل محمد فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جم من شيتنا ومحبين إلا ونزلت عليهم رحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلا أن يتفرقوا فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وفاز شيتنا ورب الكعبة فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جم من شيتنا ومحبين وفيه محموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجة وقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه صل على محمد
آج میں اپنا یہ مرثیے کا کشکول گھر میں دیکھ رہا تھا تو اپنا لکھا ہوا تو نہیں لایا آج مگر یہ کہ یہ ایک مجھے قطع مل گیا ہے امام مہدی کے بارے میں، تو آپ بھی سن لیجئے۔ تیرے وجود کا قائل نہیں جو دنیا میں، دراصل ایسا بشر مصطفیٰ کا دشمن ہے۔ تیرا خدا بھی ہے پردے میں، تو بھی پردے میں، تیرے وجود کا منکر خدا کا منکر ہے۔ یہ ایک تھا اسے، اور ایک سلام ہے، اس کے بعد دو بند مرثیے کے امام حسن کے بارے میں۔ شام کا دربار ہے اور خور شبیر ہے، اور عابد مستر کی خاطر طوق ہے زنجیر ہے، اور حرملا کا تیر ہے اور گردن بے شیر ہے۔ اے مسلماں کیا یہی اسلام کی تعمیر ہے؟ اور دین حق کو تازگی ملتی رہے گی حشر تک، کربلا والوں کی غم کی مستقر تاثیر ہے۔ اور وارث قرآن ہیں دونوں، ہوں زینب یا حسین، ایک قرآن دوسری قرآن کی تفسیر ہے۔ اور شام کے دربار میں ایک انقلاب آنے کو ہے، اللہ اللہ کس اسیر غم کی یہ تقریر ہے۔ کیا یہی اجر رسالت ہے مسلمانان شام؟ کیا یہی اجر رسالت ہے مسلمانان شام؟ نو کے نیزہ پر رسول اللہ کی تصویر ہے۔ اور اصغر معصوم کے گردن میں آیا تھا جو تیر، آج تک اسلام کی حلقون میں وہ تیر ہے۔ اور سر برہنہ اشقیاء لائے ہیں بلبے میں، جسے فاطمہ کی جان ہے وہ وارث تطہیر ہے۔ اس سے بڑھ کر اور کیا شان مقدر ہو اسد، رات دن میری نظر میں روضہ شبیر ہے۔ صلوات۔ اور مرثیہ کے دو بند امام حسن، شہادت امام حسن۔ جس دم حسن کا زہر سے ٹکڑے ہوا جگر، اور سم کا جو روح پاک پہ ظاہر اثر ہوا، اور راحت میں فرق اور شکم میں خلل ہوا، اور کٹ کر کلیجہ تشت کے اندر نکل پڑا، اور دوڑیں جناب زینب بے کس برہنہ پا، دیکھا کہ لوٹتے ہیں بچھونے پہ مشتبہ، اور بولی یہ سر کو پیٹ کے غم کی وہ مبتلا، ہائے ہائے بہن نثار ہو بھائی یہ کیا ہوا؟ کیا پھر کسی نے زہر وغا سے پلا دیا؟ کس نے میرے کلیجے پہ خنجر چلا دیا؟ اور فرمایا لاؤ تشت ہوا زہر کا اثر، اور رہ رہ کہ کوئی کاٹتا ہے تیغ سے جگر، اور بڑھتا تھا جب کہ درد جگر میں امام کے، اور جھکتے تھے بار بار کلیجے کو تھام کے، اور فرماتے تھے حسن کے بلاؤ حسین کو، اور بھائی کا حال اظہار سناؤ حسین کو، اور ٹکڑے میرے جگر کے دکھاؤ حسین کو، اور آئے حسین اتنے میں بچشم اشک بار، اور چلاتے تھے کہ آپ کی غربت کے میں نثار، اور شبر گلے کو چوم کے کہتے تھے بار بار میں تم پہ صدقے اے میرے نانا کی یادگار، مجھ سے زیادہ ظلم اور ستم تم پہ ہوئیں گے، اور ہم قبر میں تمہاری مصیبت کو روئیں گے۔ اور غسل و کفن امام کو جب دے چکے امام، اور جمع ہو چکے در دولت پہ خاص و عام، جس دم اٹھا جنازہ شہزادہ انعام، کرتے تھے انبیاء اولوالعزم اہتمام، تھے شیش نوح چاک گریباں کیے ہوئے، الیاس و خضر حال پریشاں کیے ہوئے، اور تابوت پہ جو تیر لگے آ کے ناگہاں، اور عمیدۂ نبرد ہوئے شاہ انس و جاں، آئی ندائے غیب کیا شاہ دو جہاں، سر پیٹتی ہے فاطمہ بسد فغاں، اور جس دم حسن کا زہر سے ٹکڑے ہوا جگر۔ صلوات۔
محمد والے محمد صلوات۔ بار دیگر نعرہ صلوات۔ گونجی باوقت عصر صدا، میں حسین ہوں، گونجی باوقت عصر صدا، میں حسین ہوں، کاٹو نہ میرا خشک گلا، ہے کاٹو نہ میرا خشک گلا، میں حسین ہوں، عصر صدا میں حسین ہوں. اور اماں کسی نے پانی کی ایک بوند بھی نہ دی, اماں کسی نے پانی کی ایک بوند بھی نہ دی. میں بار بار کہتا رہا ہے, میں بار بار کہتا رہا میں حسین ہوں. گونجی بوقت عصر صدا میں حسین ہوں. اور سوکھی ہوئی ہے شمر میرے حلق کی رگیں, سوکھی ہوئی ہے شمر میرے حلق کی رگیں. آہستہ تو چھری کو چلا ہے, آہستہ تو چھری کو چلا میں حسین ہوں. گونجی بوقت عصر صدا میں حسین ہوں. اور بے بازوؤں کی لاش تڑپ کر الٹ گئی, بے بازوؤں کی لاش تڑپ کر الٹ گئی. آئی فرات پر جو صدا ہے, آئی فرات پر جو صدا میں حسین ہوں. گونجی بوقت عصر صدا میں حسین ہوں. اور الوداعی کے اے شامیوں کفن نہ دیا مجھ کو غم نہیں, اے شامیوں کفن نہ دیا مجھ کو غم نہیں. دے دو میری بہن کو ردا ہے, دے دو میری بہن کو ردا میں حسین ہوں. گونجی بوقت عصر صدا میں حسین ہوں. پر محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم.
دیگر صلوات. در کوئی ہم کو اور نہ دربار چاہیے, در کوئی ہم کو نہ دربار چاہیے, آل نبی کا سایہ دیوار چاہیے. اہل جہاں کو دولت دنیا کی ہے تلاش, اہل جہاں کو دولت و دنیا کی ہے تلاش, اور ہم کو عشق حیدر قرار چاہیے. سر کو در حبیب پہ سجدوں کی آرزو, لب کو ثنائے عطرت اطہار چاہیے. آنکھوں کو اشک غم کے تسلسل کی ہے طلب, ہاتھوں کو ماتم شہ ابرار چاہیے. سوئے اگر تو مرضی خالق خرید لے, سوئے اگر تو مرضی خالق خرید لے, انسان کو ایسا طالع بیدار چاہیے. ذکر علی عبادت پروردگار ہے, مثل نماز اس کو بھی تکرار چاہیے. اور دنیا کو اپنے غم میں مسیحا کی ہے تلاش, اور ہم کو اپنا عابد بیمار چاہیے. آتی ہے اب بھی کانوں میں میسم کی یہ صدا, اعلان حق ہمیشہ سرے دار چاہیے. اور لازم ہے گر کہ حق کا علم سر نگو نہ ہو, لازم ہے گر کہ حق کا علم سر نگو نہ ہو, عباس جیسا کوئی علمدار چاہیے. اور اہل ستم پہ دین کی حجت تمام ہو، اہل ستم پہ دین کی حجت تمام ہو، ان کو شبیہ احمد مختار چاہیے، اور یہ کہہ کے لائے ہاتھوں پہ اصغر کو شاہدیں، یہ کہہ کے لائے ہاتھوں پہ اصغر کو شاہدیں، حاضر ہے جو بھی اے میرے غفار چاہیے، بچی نے خواب دیکھا ہے زندان شام میں، اب اس کو صرف باپ کا دیدار چاہیے، اور اے ظالموں یہ آل رسول انعام ہے، اے ظالموں یہ آل رسول انعام ہے، تشہیر اس کی کیا سرے بازار چاہیے۔ اور آپ کی توجہ چاہیے، اشک غم حسین بکیں گے تو کس طرح، اشک غم حسین بکیں گے تو کس طرح، ان موتیوں کو حشر کا بازار چاہیے، اور بات یہاں بھی ختم نہیں ہو رہی ہے، اشک غم حسین بکیں گے تو کس طرح، ان موتیوں کو حشر کا بازار چاہیے، اور محشر میں بھی لگا نہ سکا کوئی ان کے دام، اور محشر میں بھی کوئی لگا نہ سکا ان کے دام، اب ان کو فاطمہ سا خریدار چاہیے، خالق کا ہم زباں جو بننا ہے اے کلیم، لب پہ ثنا عطرت اطہار چاہیے۔ صلوات۔
Assalamu alaikum. With this, I will invite Maulana to come on the member, and please recite a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala
رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Surah Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas is requested for the sponsors of today's Majlis for their marhumin for the following: Salma Aziz, daughter of Sayyid Ata Hussein; Aziz Hussein Abidi, son of Nazir Hussein Abidi; Nazar Abbas, son of Mirza Baqir Abbas; Azra Munawwara Ali, daughter of Sayyid Ata Hussein Agha; Osaf Hussein, son of Wasif Hussein Agha; Agha Kaisar Abbas, son of Agha Ahsan Abbas; and all marhumin and marhumin of mu'minin mu'minat. Surah Al-Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas. Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم تر إلى الذين قيل لهم كفوا أيديكم وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة فلما كتب عليهم القتال إذا فريق منهم يخشون الناس كخشية الله أو أشد خشية وقالوا ربنا لما كتبت علينا القتال لولا أخرتنا إلى أجل كريم قل متاع الدنيا قليل والآخرة خير لمن اتقى ولا تظلمون فتيلا. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد. And your loudest salawat to hasten صاحب العصر والزمان عجل الله صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بذكرنا المصائب آل Muhammad. May Allah increase in our reward for commemorating the Masa'ib of Ali Muhammad. Again, inshallah, tonight we'll split our discussion into two parts. The first we'll discuss some of the ahkam and masail mubtala bih that are important to us to know. And in the second half, inshallah, we'll have a discussion that tonight, inshallah, we'll take some time to discuss our second Imam Hassan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa. As tomorrow night will be the munasibat of the shahadat of our Imam and of our Holy Prophet. In the first half of our discussion, we've been mentioning some of the ahkam of people who pass away and of the process by which we should pay attention to and assist the person. Tonight we'll mention briefly some of the points that when a person passes away, how do we fulfill our obligations to them? First and foremost, it's said that if we're around the person who has passed away or someone passes away before us, one of the first things that's very mustahab for us to do is to straighten their body. That, for example, to close their eyes, close their mouth, straighten their limbs, straighten their hands, put them to the side and straighten out the body. It's one of the mustahab actions to perform. One of the things that we know is that there is something called ghusl mass mayyit. The ghusl of, or the ghusl, the wajib washing for a person who has touched a deceased person. This ghusl mass mayyit becomes obligatory on a person who touches a person who has passed away, whose body has become cold but has not been given ghusl yet. Now within this, there are two ways that we can understand this. One, for example, when a person passes away, it's true their body temperature starts to cool. Now it happens that it may be that some parts of the body, for example, the extremities, the fingers, the hands, the feet, become cold first, but the rest of the body is still warm. It's not mandatory to do ghusl mass mayyit if, for example, the hands have become cold but the body is still warm. As long as there is some warmth in the body, touching that person, even on a part that's become cold, does not mandate that ghusl mass mayyit should be done, that this ghusl is mandatory to be done. But once the body has become completely cold, then if I touch this person before they have been given ghusl mass mayyit, I have to do ghusl. Before they've been given ghusl mayyit, I have to do mass mayyit. The two differences here is ghusl mayyit is the ghusl given to the deceased person. Ghusl mass mayyit is the ghusl that a person who has touched a dead body has to do. In the aspect of, for example, what makes this ghusl wajib, if I as a person touch, for example, the hand of someone who is deceased whose body has become cold, ghusl is wajib. If I touch their nails, ghusl becomes wajib. If my nail touches them, because my nail, right, doesn't have life in it, it still becomes wajib upon me. The only thing that doesn't make this ghusl wajib is, for example, if my hair touches them or if their hair touches me. Other than that, any contact between me and the deceased who has not had ghusl done yet requires this ghusl mass mayyit. The idea that, for example, to touch a person who is deceased is one of the interesting points that we see the statement of our master Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, where he explains what does this human being have to be proud of. He comes from a dot of fluid that itself is najis. He ends his life as something that not only is najis but makes anything that touches it najis. And between these two extremities, he is a container of najasat. Imam Ali, when he tells us, what are you being proud of? What do you have to be proud of? Look at how he describes it. He says, you, O man, you come from something that itself is najis. And when you end, you are so najis that not only are you najis that you need to be given ghusl, but if someone touches you, they become najis by touching you. And he says, between these two, you're a container of najasa. How? Think about it. Anything that's inside of us, whether it's blood, anything, inside of us it's clean. But as soon as something comes out of me, it becomes najis. Imam Ali is saying, what are you proud of? What do you have to be proud of? He's educating us that be humble in this world, that look at the reality. It's not about what people should think of me, it's the reality of what I'm created as, that I'm constantly in a state of something that is so close to impurity and filth that I have to constantly be cleaning this body. Why are we proud of anything? In this aspect, we see that this ghusl al-mas mayyit, if we were to look at the aspect of performing ghusl very briefly, and we'll mention this, and inshallah we'll move on and we'll continue this conversation tomorrow as well. Ghusl by itself, there are certain wajib aghsal, or ghusls that become mandatory upon us. One of the important things to note is that there is something that is a wajib ghusl and then a mustahab ghusl. And then within mustahab ghusl, there are of two types. One is ghusl mustahab mu'akkida and ghair mu'akkida. What does this mean? First off, when we talk about a wajib ghusl, if ghusl becomes wajib upon me, it takes the place of wudu. Meaning whether it's janabat, masamiyat, hayd, anything that's a wajib ghusl, if I perform this wajib ghusl and I don't have anything that breaks this ghusl, none of the actions that break wudu happen, then this ghusl satisfies and takes the place of wudu. And I don't have to do wudu after this. Mustahab ghusl of the two types. There's one that is known and certain that it's mustahab, and there's one that we're not sure if it's mustahab. Those ghusl that we're sure are mustahab also take the place of wudu. One of the examples, the prime example of this is ghusl al-Jummah. Ghusl al-Jummah is one of the mustahab ghusls that's incredibly recommended to perform. That every Friday we do a ghusl. This ghusl also, because we're certain that the Imam prescribed it, takes the place of wudu, and if I do ghusl al-Jummah, I don't have to do wudu after it. There's another type of wudu that we believe is recommended, but we don't know for sure, did the Imam actually say it? We're not sure if the riwayah was sahih or not. That ghusl, if I perform that ghusl, I should, as a precaution, ensure that I join wudu with it. An example of one of these ghusls that, for example, we think is mustahab, but we're not sure, is, for example, the ghusl for going to the ziyarat of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. After lengthy debate around this particular ghusl, that when I go to the ziyarat of Imam Hussein, inshallah may Allah give us all tawfiq to go to Karbala, when I approach the ziyarat of Imam Hussein, it is mustahab that we perform ghusl before we go. We even know that Jabir, when he goes and he performs the first ziyarat of Imam Hussein, before he goes to the ziyarat, he does ghusl before he goes to Imam Hussein. But the narrations that have reached us that this is the Imams have recommended this, we're not 100% sure to say that this ziyarat, this hadith is exactly sahih and that this ghusl will take the place of wudu. Therefore, it's a mustahab thing that we should do, and we expect Allah to reward us for it. But that if we perform this ghusl, we join it with wudu so that our prayers are correct. In the aspect of performing ghusl, there are three parts to performing a ghusl. Well, there are two types. There is ghusl irtimasi and ghusl tartibi. Ghusl irtimasi refers to that ghusl that is performed by dunking my entire body into water in one instance. A swimming pool is a valid place to do this. In old times, in old houses, they would have a pool inside the house that was exactly the equivalent of 1 quart of water so that you could perform this ghusl in your house. Unfortunately, these days, jacuzzis are not big enough. They don't really count. They won't do it. We don't really build our houses to have this facility unless if you have a pool in your house in which you can do ghusl irtimasi, or you go to the banks of the river or to the ocean. In which case, what you would do is you would either one, stand outside of the water, make my intention, I am performing ghusl, you don't have to say irtimasi, I'm performing ghusl, qurbatan ilallah, and then you walk into the water, you jump into the water, or if I'm already in the water and I want to do my ghusl, I would take out a limb of my body from the water, make the intention I'm doing ghusl irtimasi, and then entirely dunk my body in water at one time. The more common ghusl that we perform this day and age is known as ghusl tartibi, or the ordered ghusl. The ordered ghusl commits three parts. First and foremost is the intention that I make that I'm performing ghusl. Now, it may be that I have multiple ghusls that are wajib on me at the same time. For example, I have ghusl masamiyat, ghusl janabat, ghusl jum'ah, all that I want to perform. I don't have to do 3 ghusl. I can make one intention and include all of these ghusls, that I'm performing this, qurbatan ilallah, and I perform all 3 ghusl at the same time. In this process, there are 3 parts to this ghusl. First is washing of the head and the neck, then washing of the neck and the right side, and then washing of the neck and the left side. Now, what's one of the differences to note is that there is a small difference between the maraja on the topic of this ghusl. And let me explain what. You guys are okay, right? It's okay? Okay. Typically, the maraja said that if you have a shower going, you can stand under it and move yourself around, and there you go, your ghusl is done. Sayyid Sistani, Hafidhahullah, has made the statement that no, I don't just want you to stand under the water, I want you to move the water around on your body to ensure that everything is covered. Then your ghusl is correct. That this is, and it's a good precaution, I'll explain why. If we just simply stand under the water, I'm not sure what part did I get, did I miss anything, is there something that was supposed to be washed, I didn't get it. The preferred method that Sayyid Sistani is recommending that you move around the water is that, for example, when I wash my head and my neck, I take my hands and I move the water around to make sure that everything is touched. And as I'm standing under the water and I'm moving this water around, I know that now this area is complete. The reason that we include the neck in both the head and the body is to say that at what point in time does the neck change to the body and what point in time is part of the head. So we include the neck in both. In whether when we wash the head or when we wash the body, we include the neck. Then we wash our right side. And again, it's mustahab, you give a little bit of an overlap to ensure that wherever that middle line comes, you've gotten everything that's there and you give an overlap and you rub your hand over your body, you move the water around to make sure that water reaches every part, and then we wash the left side in the same way. Now, things that I need to pay attention to. I get between the toes, I get between my fingers, I get behind my neck. These are points that I can make sure that I move the water around and everything has been washed and clean and it's sufficient, and we've made sure that this ghusl is now properly completed. The same is true whether it's for ghusl masemayyit, ghusl janabat, ghusl jum'ah, any of these aghsal that I have to perform, the technique is the same. Now, ghusl mayyit is a different process altogether that inshallah we'll discuss tomorrow night. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In the second part of our discussion, when we talk about the A'immah alayhimus salam, it's important that we study and we think about and we learn lessons from the examples of the A'immah. In the life of Imam Hassan, we know that the first 7 years of his life he spent with our Holy Prophet, the next 33 years he spent with his father, and then the next 10 years, 9 to 10 years were spent in his imamat. And that this lifespan of his is something that deserves to be analyzed, and it's something that, for example, requires attention. These personalities of the Ahlul Bayt have gone under the process of character assassination against them. Whether we look at any one of these people, the enemies of Islam of that time would try to distract us and keep us away from these people. And they did it to Imam Hassan as well too. One of the things that's said about Imam Hassan, and this is a lie, and I'll explain to you why it's a lie as well too, is that there's a narration that says that his father, Imam Ali, said, "Don't let your daughters marry my son Hassan, because he is kathirat talaq. He performs divorce a lot." And this is actually laid as a claim against Imam Hassan that he had many wives and he divorced many wives. But this is an attempt at character assassination of Imam Hassan, which is why when we read popular history, you may hear this from popular history. Alhamdulillah, in our masajid, this is not something that's mentioned, nor is it something that's believed. We've thrown it out. But amongst the Muslims as a society, sometimes they'll lay this claim against Imam Hassan. And they'll lay this claim on the basis of saying that Imam Ali is the one who told us, "Don't marry your daughters to my son." We know this is a lie. How? First and foremost is that Imam Hassan is an imam. Any action that he performs is an action that is for us to follow. Imam Ali knows that his son is an imam of the ummah. Why would then Imam Ali tell the people not to follow the imam? That intellectually speaking, this concept of them making the statement, we can immediately characterize that they're doing character assassination. They're trying to attack the character of Imam Hassan, and we throw this out, and we know that Imam Ali would never tell us not to follow the example of the imam. The example of the imam is an authority over us, and we know from the statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, Hasanan imaman hadhihi al-ummah, law qama aw qa'da. That these two sons of mine, Hassan and Hussein, are the imams of this ummah, whether they stand or they sit. Now, this concept of standing or sitting refers to the idea of whether they stand in war or they sit in peace. Now, this is the other place that they made an attack on the character of Imam Hassan, to say that Imam Hassan was a pacifist. That, na'uzubillah, Imam Hassan was a pacifist, that he did not want to fight, and Imam Hussein was an aggressive person, na'uzubillah, who wanted to fight. And they say that this was the discretion of the Imam that he chose not to fight, and this was the personality of the Imam. This too is a lie and an attack on the character of the Imam. When we look at the lives of the Imams, we have to understand the role of the Imam and how we build a relationship with that Imam. An Imam is a hujjah and authority over us. When an Imam acts, he doesn't act by his discretion, he acts by the needs of the time. Let me explain what that means. You guys okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You and I, when we choose, for example, our profession, our personality plays into our profession. If I'm afraid of blood, I'm not going to be a doctor. Fair, right? I shouldn't be a doctor. You agree? Okay. I could be something else. I need to be something else. I don't need to be. If I'm afraid of blood, I shouldn't be a doctor. Why? Because my personality impacts how I behave. If I don't like math, I shouldn't be an engineer. I can't do math. How can I be an engineer? I don't like arguing with people. I shouldn't be a lawyer. You thought I was going to say you shouldn't get married, right? No, that's not what I was going to say. These aspects of our personality play into the professions and how we live our life. But in Imam, his actions are not based upon his personality. His actions are purely based upon the need of Islam at that time. Which is why, had Imam Hassan been present in the circumstance of Karbala, he would have been the one who fought against Yazid. Now the mistake that people make is they say that these were the personalities of the Imams. When they look at, for example, the Tariq of the A'immah and they look at the topic of dealing with the government, they see multiple different examples. They see Imam Hassan who made peace. They see Imam Hussein who fought the Khalifa. They see Imam Zainul Abidin who was silent and away from the Khalifa. They see Imam Radha who was the Naib Khalifa. If we were to look at all of these, the first thing we would say is there's ikhtilaf, there's disagreement. One makes peace, one makes more war, one avoids the situation, one becomes the naib. That's not the case. The Imam is not showing his personality. The Imam is saying, look at the circumstance that you are in, find the situation of your time, and then look which example of ours you need to follow in that circumstance. If you find your situation like the time of Imam Hassan, that the mu'mineen don't want to stand in defense, then the way that you protect Islam is by making peace. If you find the circumstance of Imam Hussein, where the one is such a despot that he will destroy the image of Islam, it becomes mandatory to save Islam by fighting. If you find the circumstance that the government itself is uneven and unsafe and not relevant to the ability to change and to help people, you follow the example of Imam Zainul Abidin. If you find the circumstance that the government will remove you and your ability to help the people, and they threaten your life, that you have to be able to help the people, you follow the example of Imam Raza. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. When we learn about the example of the Ahlul Bayt, we can't learn about them in a vacuum to say that the Imam did whatever he wanted. No, to understand why the Imam behaved the way he did, we have to look at the circumstance to understand the situation of the time. And the situation of the time of Imam Hassan is something that's very unique. Now, to put context to this, first off, there are many lessons to learn from the life of Imam Hassan. One, he was known as Al-Mujtaba, the generous one. That whether we talk about the sufra of Imam Hassan, we talk about the generosity of Imam Hassan, it was something exemplary. Shall I give you an example we don't discuss very often? One salawat and I'll give you an example of the generosity. It's narrated that at one point in time, Imam Hassan had given away all of his wealth. In his life, Imam Hassan gave away all of his wealth, maybe 3 times. Every penny that he had, he gave away in the way of Allah. At one point in time when Imam Hassan had no wealth with him at all, the people had begun to believe that Imam Hassan was in poverty. He had nothing. Imam Hassan didn't like that people should believe that Imam Hassan is not generous or that he doesn't have anything to give. So they say that Imam Hassan took a loan of 1,000 dinar and gave that 1,000 dinar immediately away in sadaqah, so that the people would say that this Hassan ibn Ali cannot be one who is in poverty, otherwise why would he give away 1,000 dinar in sadaqah? The lesson the Imam was teaching, that amongst the people to have a good image and presentation, though we may be in difficulty individually, is a sign of trust in Allah, that we continue to do the goodness that Allah wants to see from us. Imam Hassan's generosity was why he is known as Al-Mujtaba. But this verse that we began our discussion with, verse number 77 of Surah An-Nisa, this verse talks about Alam tara ila alladhina qila lahum kuffu aydiyakum wa aqimus salat wa atuz zakat. Have you not looked at the example of those who were told to hold back their hands from fighting and to perform the prayer and give zakat? فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالِ, and then when they were prescribed that they should go out and fight, إِذَا فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ يَغْشَوْنَ النَّاسَ كَخَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ أَوْ أَشَدَّ خَشْيَةً. That when they were told to go and fight, a group from amongst them became afraid of the people like they feared Allah, or they were more afraid of people than they were afraid of Allah. And they said, قَالُوا رَبَّنَا لِمَا كَتَبْتَ عَلَيْنَا قِتَالٍ لَوْلَا أَخَرْتَنَا إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ قَرِيبٍ. They complain to Allah, they say, oh Allah, why did you not hold off fighting from us until a later time? Why did you make us fight now? And then Allah replies, قَالُوا, that say to them that certainly that this life, مَتَاعَ الدُّنْيَا قَلِيلًا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِمَنِ اتَّقَى. That this life is a very short life. There's nothing important or valuable in this life. Truly the akhirah is the best place for those who do goodness, who have piety. And you will not be dealt with unjustly. وَلَا تُظْلِمُونَ فَتِيلًا. That in the akhirah you will not be dealt with unjustly at all. Now, as we know, every verse of the Quran has layers of meanings. The first interpretation of this verse and the first tafsir of this verse talks about the time of our holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That during the first 10 years of his nabuwwat, when they were in Mecca, the Muslims were being mistreated by the pagans. And the Muslims would come and say that, Ya Rasulullah, by following you, we have been disgraced in society. Allow us to raise swords against these pagans and to fight them. And the Rasulullah said, this is not the time that fighting has been prescribed. Be patient. Kufu aydiyakum. Stop your hands. Wa aqimus salat wa atuz zakat. And perform prayer and give zakat during this time. There's no fighting. Then when the Prophet did hijrah to Medina, now fighting was prescribed. And now when fighting was prescribed, these same people who were being very brave before and wanting to fight, now when they were told to fight, they said, that's a very big army, we're very few people. How can we win this battle? Now they said, we don't want to fight. And I said, Allah, why didn't you wait that fighting should be done later when Islam becomes bigger, when there are more people to fight, then we should fight. We shouldn't fight now. This is the initial interpretation of this verse. However, when someone presented this verse to our fifth Imam, Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir alayhi salam, Ma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, he says one of the hidden meanings of this verses refers to the story of Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and the Imam who will come after us. They said, how? Imam al-Baqir says that in the life of Imam Hassan, when he made peace, the people wanted to fight. And Imam Hassan made peace and didn't let them fight. Then when the time of Imam Hussein came, and they were told to fight, and they were invited to fight, they were afraid of the army of Yazid, and they refused to fight, and they said, Allah, why didn't you delay fighting until the coming of the Qa'im, who will be the one who will give us victory? And in this way, Imam al-Baqir explains that what Imam Hassan did in his time was the best thing that has been done for the mu'mineen, and it is better than anything upon which the sun shines on this earth. Now, it's important to understand that Imam Hassan's imamat lasts for about 10 years, and he inherits the khilafat and the imamat from his father Imam Ali. When Imam Ali becomes shaheed, Imam Ali is the imam, we know, no question that. Imam Ali's imamat was for 33 years. His khilafat was for 4 years, 9 months. Imam Hassan received both, imamat and khilafat. The imamat of Imam Hassan lasted 10 years. The khilafat of Imam Hassan lasted for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months of his khilafat, Imam Hassan famously signed a peace treaty with Muawiyah. The mu'mineen, not the Muslimin, the mu'mineen of that time didn't like this. And pious companions who were companions of Imam Ali and knew Imam Ali and knew the Ahlul Bayt and knew that Imam Hassan is the Imam, they started to speak to the Imam in inappropriate ways. Very famously, after the treaty that Imam Hassan signed, the mu'mineen would come to Imam Hassan and say to him, Assalamu alayka ya mudhill al-mu'mineen. Imagine, they would come to the Imam of the time and they would say, Assalamu alaikum, but they would say, Assalamu alaikum, O disgrace of the believers. One who is a source of disgrace, who has disgraced us by making peace. Pious companions, who we remember, they would come and they would say things like, you've disgraced us. It would have been better if we were killed fighting Muawiyah than to live in the disgrace of the authority of Muawiyah. Now, why is this important to know? First and foremost, to understand the role and the responsibility of the Imam, that when he acts, he doesn't act by his opinion. He acts by the needs of Islam. I may have a difference of opinion with the Imam, but that doesn't give me the right to question him. Because when I question the Imam and I disagree with the Imam, I am disagreeing based upon my opinion, and Imam is acting upon the need of Islam. We don't get to question the Imam. The Imam can do, and he can spend us and do anything he wants with us. We know this because, for example, in Surah Ahzab, in the 6th verse, Allah says, "An-Nabiyyu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim." That the Prophet has more right over you than you have over yourself. That right that Rasulullah possesses, so do his awliya and awsiya after him. That the Imam can do with us whatever he wants. We need to learn this lesson now, that come tomorrow, inshallah, may tomorrow be the day of the dhuhur of the master of our time, Ajjalallahu ta'ala. Ma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. That when the Imam comes and he commands me to do something, it may disagree with my intellect. I may not understand why the Imam has issued the command that he has, but I don't have the right to question him. I don't have the right to disagree with him, and I don't have the right to disobey him. Whatever my Imam commands me to do is what I have to do. We don't want to be like the mu'mineen of the time of Imam Hassan. That the Imam commands and performs an action, and instead of us honoring and accepting his authority, we turn around and na'uzu billah, we disagree and we call him the disgrace of Islam. But look at the character of Imam Hassan. That when Imam Hassan is called Assalamu alayka ya mudhill al-mu'mineen, that, oh, salam upon you, one who disgraced the believers. Imam Hassan does not attack these people. He does not punish them. Rather, he takes them and he sits them down by the hand and he explains to them. He says, Lastu mudhill al-mu'mineen bal mu'izz al-mu'mineen. I am not the one who disgraced the mu'mineen. Rather, I am the one who raised the honor of the mu'mineen. Now, there are 2 points. One, we'll mention what Imam Hassan continues in his statement, then we'll explain how he became Mu'izz al-Mu'mineen. What was the circumstance that he is the one who gave honor to the Mu'mineen? You guys are with me? We're okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam Hassan, when he took these companions by the hand and sat them down, he says, I am the one who honored you, not disgraced you. I found in you a weakness of lacking the ability to support me. If I had taken you to battle with me in this condition, the enemy would have wiped out the mu'mineen on this earth from today until the day of judgment. So rather, I treated you like the ark of Noah treated the believers in his time. The same way the ark of Noah gathered the mu'mineen and saved them on the ark, the same way my treaty gathered you and saved you from the attacks of your enemy, so that this Islam and Iman and following of the Ahlul Bayt would continue on after us. Imam Hassan explains, he says, what I have done is preserved you in the face of certain death, and I have ensured that you will continue and you can live on amongst these people in peace. Now, how did he do this? Is where an interesting question comes, that we have to look at the situation of the time to understand what the circumstance was that the Imam went through to preserve the religion of Islam. To understand the circumstance of the time, we have to look at what was going on in the Khilafat of Imam Ali and what it was that Imam Hassan had inherited. In the time of the inheritance of Imam Hassan, there were two major factors that were playing a role on the condition of Islam and Mu'mineen. One pertained to the religion and one pertained to society. When it comes to the aspect of religion, the interference of the Khulafa and the interference of Muawiyah and the spreading of their rumors had forced people and brought innovation into the religion of Islam. When it came to the religious tenets, people no longer honored the sunnah of Rasulullah, rather they came up with their own ideas. One of the processes that you see the impact of this is that, for example, the removing of Hayya ala khair al-amal from the adhan. This was removed by the second Khalifa. Hayya ala khair al-amal, come to the best of deeds. Second Khalifa said, if we make salat the best of deeds, then who will go to fight in jihad? So don't call salat hayya ala khair al-amal, call jihad hayya ala khair al-amal. He removed it. The performing of nawafil and mustahab prayers that in the religion of Islam are recited individually were being recited in jamaat. That, for example, this taraweeh and other things that are mustahab, that if one wants to recite them individually, you can, were becoming wajib and mandatory for people to recite in jamaat, and they were being recited in the masajid. The mentions and the teachings of Rasulullah were being removed, and the people were saying, Hasbunallah kitab. That the book is sufficient for us, we don't want anything else. Other impacts of this show that, for example, still today some of the remnants of this ideology remain. Why? When you ask, for example, some of our brothers that in the battle of Jamal, it was Aisha, Talha and Zubair on one side and Imam Ali on the other side. Or in Siffin, it was Imam Ali on one side and it was Muawiyah on the other side. Who was wrong? They say none of them. You say, why? You say because all of them were mujtahideen. When they say mujtahid, it doesn't mean mujtahid the way we use mujtahid. When they say mujtahideen, it means they were people whose opinion was valid to change the rules of Islam. Amongst the Ahl Sunnah, the concept of mujtahid was that someone whose opinion is sufficient that they can change the religion of Islam. Therefore they say, since Muawiyah had spent time with Rasulullah, Imam Ali had spent time with Rasulullah, both of them were mujtahideen, and their opinion was sufficient to change the religion of Islam. Therefore, when the two of them fight, neither is wrong, because both of them are entitled to their opinion. Which is why when Imam Ali fights in Jamal, he fights against Aisha. She was the wife of the Prophet. She has the right to her opinion. Imam Ali had the right to his opinion. Both of them are mujtahideen. Neither was wrong. This idea that the opinion of someone other than the Prophet could change the religion of Islam was one of the innovations that had crept into the religion to such an extent that Imam Ali in his own khutbahs makes the statement, when I took the authority of this Islam, I found such innovation in the people that if I had forced them back to the sunnah of Rasulullah, the very swords that were fighting for me would have been turned against me. So meaning that the religion at the time of Imam Hassan had been so corrupted by the idea that along with the Quran, any one of these people who saw the Prophet can change and give us an explanation, we can do whatever they say, and it will be sufficient for Allah, instead of looking at what did our Prophet command, was the first thing that Imam Hassan inherited. The second thing, the social environment that he accepted, was the lack of security and safety that existed within the nation of the Islamic government. Let me explain what that means. You guys are okay? Not too dry? We're okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Remember that Muawiyah, after the death of the third Khalifa, had laid claim that I am the Khalifa. And Imam Ali came forward and said, no, the Imamat, the Khilafat sits with me. And Muawiyah began the process of now attacking Imam Ali and trying to lay claim that he should be the Khalifa. The consequence of this, that security within the Muslim nation, within the land of the Muslimin, the empire of Muslimin, security was lost. Muawiyah ruled Sham. The rest of the land was under Imam Ali. Muawiyah has an army to feed. He needs to have an army so that he can fight Imam Ali to take Khilafat. He needs to give them money. He needs to give them wealth. He needs to give them authority. Otherwise they won't fight for him. Where does he go? He goes into the Muslim lands and starts attacking in the Muslim lands. under the false flag that this is happening because Ali ibn Abi Talib is not a good leader. Why did you make him your leader? It's not safe under Ali ibn Abi Talib. You made a bad decision of making him your leader. The fear was that his armies that were set free in the lands of the Muslimin, if you left your town, your city, your state, and you went to another town, there was no guarantee that you would make it because the armies of Muawiyah were raiding and marauding all of the paths between the cities to create insecurity in the government so that people would turn against Imam Ali. The examples of this are, for example, Bisr ibn Arta. And when you look in history, Bisr ibn Arta was one of the generals of Muawiyah. And he sent this Bisr ibn Arta to Medina to attack Medina. He literally attacked and he went and he took control of Medina. Why? Remember, the Khilafat of Imam Ali had moved from Medina to Kufa. So Medina was a weak spot, so he sent his army there and they took over the entire area of the city of Medina. When Bisr ibn Arta couldn't do any more damage in Medina, he moved south to Yemen. And there, all of the villages that were loyal to Imam Ali, he went and he killed in them indiscriminately, including Ubaidullah ibn Abbas. Ubaidullah ibn Abbas, one of the cousins of Imam Hassan and the cousins of Imam Ali, was the general of Imam Hassan in fighting Muawiyah. But this Bisr ibn Arta killed his sons, and he killed his sons because they loved Imam Ali alayhi salam. So first there was insecurity in general, that if you left your city, you would be subject, that you could be attacked, raided, or marauded by the armies of Muawiyah, who were trying to create insecurity in the land. And then specifically, the armies of Muawiyah focused and attacked the Shia, those who love the Ahlul Bayt, such that if you were figured out that you were a lover of Ahlul Bayt, you loved Imam Ali, your life was forfeit even in your own town. Like the sons of Ubaidullah, it happened even other than that, where, for example, Sufyan ibn Auf al-Azdi, another of the generals of Muawiyah, Muawiyah sent this Sufyan ibn Auf to the borders of Iraq, above Baghdad, to expand the boundary of the religion of Islam. But this Sufyan, he found it very difficult. He said, it's very hard, there's not much money to be made here. So instead of fighting on the boundaries of Islam to expand the Muslim environment, he decided, instead I'll go to Anbar. Anbar was a province loyal to Imam Ali alayhi salam, where the Shia lived. This Sufyan, he killed so many in Anbar that he set the precedent that you can be killed if you love Ahlul Bayt, if you're a man, woman, or child. In the history of the province of Anbar till today, there has not been anyone who created as much havoc and damage in that area by killing so many people as this general of Muawiyah. This was the history, that when Imam Hassan receives the Khilafat and he now signs a treaty, that it's not safe for religion, the religion is being changed, it's not safe for the people to travel, and it's not safe if you love Ahlul Bayt. So what Imam Hassan does is he restores the honor. When Imam Hassan says, لَسْتُ مُذِلَّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ بَلْ مُعِزَّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, I am the one who restored honor to the mu'mineen. It's the treaty of Imam Hassan that he uses as a tool to bring about security and safety for the mu'mineen in the religion of Islam. How? Look at the conditions of the treaty. The first thing that he puts as a condition on Muawiyah and his treaty is, "O Muawiyah, if you wish to rule in Khilafat, you will rule according to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet." That he now ties the hands of Muawiyah, that these are the two things you can rule by, not by your own opinion. You cannot add and remove things to the religion, but rather anything that you issue as an edict has to be according to either Quran or the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet. Therefore, Imam Hassan, the first thing he does is he takes the Muslimin who are getting lost in the opinions of all of these people who are around and brings them back to following the teachings of our Holy Prophet, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The second condition that he puts on Muawiyah is he says that you will not attack any of the Muslim lands. You are not allowed to touch any of the Muslimin, and you cannot raid within the Muslim lands, but you have to protect the boundaries of Islam. That the idea of, again, attaching safety for people to be able to travel within the cities of Islam was one of the fundamentals that Imam Hassan lays out. The third condition he lays out is, anyone who was loyal to my father Imam Ali, you don't have the right to attack them, nor can you kill them. And the example of this comes that after the signing of this treaty, Ziyad ibn Abi, the father of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, Ziyad, his father, was also a butcher, was someone who hated the Ahlul Bayt. That after this treaty is signed, Muawiyah makes him the governor of Basra and makes him the governor of provinces. And what this governor would do is he would call the Shia to him and he would assassinate them. That's when Imam Hassan, now one of the Shia, come to him and he says, I received a letter from this Ziyad. Imam Hassan, he says, Imam Hassan, I'm afraid if I go to him, he'll kill me. Imam Hassan writes a letter to Ziyad and he says, now, you've called one of our followers, per the agreement of the treaty with your Khalifa, I hope you're not calling him for anything but goodness because you have no right to do anything to him or cause him any harm. Ziyad, his animosity to Ahlul Bayt was not hidden. How else do you think he had a son like Ubaydullah? He writes to Imam Hassan, he says that this is a fasiq, this is a disbeliever, a sinner, the son of a disbeliever. And the fact that he believes in you makes his blood permissible for me. And I swear to you, if this man hid between your skin and your flesh, I would cut your flesh to go kill him. Imam Hassan takes this and writes a letter to Muawiyah and he says, control your governor. Muawiyah in turn writes a letter to Ziyad and says, lay your hands off of them, you don't have permission to touch them. Meaning that he listened to the instruction and Imam Hassan became a protector for the believers, such that in the life of Imam Hassan, we saw that all of the disgraces and the problems that were befalling the mu'mineen were returning them and allowing them to exist with safety and security in their time. That they were not people who were being abused. Now, if we've gotten this far, there's an argument that's presented. Are you guys okay? All right. The argument that's presented is to say that Muawiyah violated all of the rules of the treaty. And that Muawiyah, upon accepting the Khilafat, when he stepped into Masjid Kufa, the first thing he said is, I did not take this Khilafat away from Hassan to be someone who leads you in prayers and fasts, but rather I took this Khilafat to rule over you and have authority over you. And I don't respect and honor any of the conditions that I've said. Now Muawiyah made this statement. It's very true. But when we look at the lifespan of Imam Hassan and we look at the analysis of history, we find that Muawiyah was afraid of Imam Hassan, that Imam Hassan could overthrow Muawiyah. One of the proofs of this happens that after Muawiyah takes the Khilafat in the year 41 after Hijrah. In the year 44 after Hijrah, Muawiyah visits from Sham, visits the city of Medina. When he visits the city of Medina, he sits with the daughter of Uthman, the third Khalifa. And the daughter of Uthman in the year 44 after Hijrah is complaining to Muawiyah, oh Muawiyah, you became the Khalifa but you're sitting in Sham. This Hassan in the city of Medina is gaining power. Crush him now. Muawiyah replies, he says, if I violate this treaty that I made with him, he's going to violate the treaty that I made with him. And if he violates the treaty and we both violate this treaty, I don't know who will remain on the throne and who will wind up under the throne. So Muawiyah says to the daughter of Uthman, he says, I will not violate this treaty. When we look at the events in history, we see that for the 10 years in the life of Imam Hassan that he was alive until the year approximately 50, from 40 to 50, that approximately at this time, Muawiyah follows all of the rules of the treaty that he set with Imam Hassan. It's only after the shahadat of Imam Hassan that he becomes bold enough to start changing things and bringing his innovation that famously is known for the attacks on the Shia and the followers of Ahlul Bayt. There are proofs of this. One, that the practice of cursing Imam Ali from the pulpit doesn't begin until the year 51 after Hijrah. Imam Hassan Shahad is in 50. He begins afterwards. The killing of, for example, Hujr ibn Adi. The killing of Hujr ibn Adi takes place in the year 454 after Hijrah. That the open killing of the companions of Imam Ali didn't happen as long as Imam Hassan was alive. After the shahadat of Imam Hassan is when he became bold enough to kill Hujr ibn Adi, 3 years after the shahadat of Imam Hassan. There's also a companion of the Ahlul Bayt known as Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khaza'i. Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khaza'i was one of the companions of Imam Ali and of Imam Hassan. This companion who we know we don't discuss very often, but was one of the true supporters of Ahlul Bayt, and he was killed in the year 51 after Hijrah, after the Shahadat of Imam Hassan. The first head in the history of Islam to be paraded through the cities was the head of this Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khazai. And the first head that the wife of Amr was imprisoned for being married to him, and the head was given back to her in prison. If we see the events of Karbala, the first one of the companions and the lovers of Ahlul Bayt that suffered this consequence was this Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khazai, which happened after the Shahadat of Imam Hassan. When we take a look, for example, the switching of this man, of how he changed the Khilafah to a kingdom, only happened after he was certain of the Shahadat of Imam Hassan, that he started calling himself the king. All of the violations that Muawiyah does happen after the Shahadat of Imam Hassan, which is why Abdullah ibn Abbas, one of the famous historians, narrators of tafsir, narrators of hadith, says that the honor of the Muslimin fell, the respect of the Muslimin fell after the Shahadat of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. That as long as this Imam Hassan was alive, there was some dignity and honor in the religion of Islam. After his going, there was nothing but disgrace and attacks on faith. When we see, for example, the cry of Imam Hussein, Hayhat min al-dhilla, this comes after the Shahadat of Imam Hassan. That after Imam Hassan, the condition is disgraceful. And this disgrace that we talk about, it's important to understand. When the Imam says, Hayhat min al-dhilla, we are far from disgrace. This disgrace is not the worldly affairs and the worldly honors that are associated with the dignity that we believe. No, that dhilla that Imam Hussein says that we are far from this disgrace is the sinning against the command of Allah. And he's teaching us that if the condition comes that the only way you stay alive is to sin against Allah, then that's not a life that we want to have. That's not a life we will live. In this way we understand, and we have to pay attention. Don't imagine that Imam Hassan, na'uzubillah, was someone who made peace because he was a pacifist. No. Imam Hassan's peace was, the condition of the time was such that there was no way for a mu'min to continue his life. And Imam made sacrifices of himself to ensure that the mu'mineen would continue to live in this world. He suffered the character assassinations to protect the religion of Islam. And Muawiyah knew that as long as this Hassan ibn Ali is alive, that he could not be someone who takes control of the religion. Therefore, he made many assassination attempts on Imam Hassan, the last of which was the one that was successful. And we know this from the words of Imam Hassan himself, that in one narration it writes and says that Imam Hassan alayhi salam was sitting, after having consumed this poison, was sitting with Imam Hussein and Hazrat Abbas, and in the middle of sitting with them, he stood up and left the room outside. Imam Hussein and Abul Fadl follow the Imam. When they go outside, they said, we saw Imam Hassan poking at his own blood with a stick and saying, I swear I've been poisoned many times, but never have I been given such a vile poison as this one. Imam Hassan was poisoned by his wife, Ju'da Mal'una. That she was promised that if you poison your husband, Imam Hassan, I will marry you to my son and give you a great deal of wealth. And the poison that was brought for Imam Hassan was a poison from the land of Rome, which was foreign to the people. And it said that the day that Imam Hassan was poisoned, he had been fasting the entire day in the heat. When he returned home, this Ju'da, to open his fast, presented him with a poisoned glass of milk. This poison was so severe that the historians, my teacher narrates, I don't take the responsibility of this statement. He says that Imam Hassan took one sip, and the effect of the poison began in such a way that he threw away the glass. The burning of the poison was in him is such that immediately he found such discomfort. They said Imam Hassan couldn't find a place to sit. He walked around the house in pain, suffering in difficulty, until eventually he collapsed from the difficulty of the poison. He says, this is burning inside of my body in such a way that I can't find relief anywhere. They describe that Imam Hassan suffered the effects of this poison for 40 days. For 40 days, my Imam suffered this poison that would cut up his insides and he would vomit his own blood. He would go outside in the beginning, but as he became weaker, he could not go outside until eventually the condition was such that the Imam could not get up. Imam Hussein is sitting by Imam Hassan as he lays in bed. His color has started to change green from the effects of the poison. Imam Hassan, feeling the pain, he says, "Oh Hussein, bring to me that tasht, that basin." Imam Hussein brings the basin and Imam Hassan begins to vomit his own blood. He described that so much blood came out that Abu Abdullah wept with tears as he saw the blood covering the mouth of his brother. He wiped his brother's mouth, and as they were sitting, they heard someone coming to the door. Imam Hassan said, "Oh Hussein, cover this tray. If it is our sister Zainab, it will be too difficult for her to see this scene." Imam Hussein covered the tray and put it into a corner. But Sayyidah Zainab enters the room. She is the sister of these two Ma'sumeen. She looks in the room and finds the covered tray. She uncovers it and sees the blood of her brother filling this tray. She says, "Oh my poor Hassan, oh my poor master, what is your condition that you are in such a condition?" Oh Sayyidah Zainab, the blood of Imam Hassan is difficult for you to see. It is not long that the same kind of tray will hold the head of Abu Abdullah. Imam Hussein, in the final time of Imam Hassan, holds Imam Hassan and hugs him to his chest, holds his head in his lap. As he caresses the head of his brother, he begins to weep. Imam Hassan asks, "Oh my brother Hussein, what has made you cry?" He says, "Oh Hassan, I see that your skin has turned green from this poison. I cry at the difficulty you are going through now." Hearing this, Imam Hassan begins to weep. He says, "Oh Hussein, you cry for me, but what of you? Who will hold your head in their lap when you are about to be shaheed? Who will be there for you when it is your final time?" Eventually, the effects of the poison became so much that they said, "We saw the sweat of death overcome the brow of Imam Hassan. His breathing became shallow. His hands opened and closed. His eyes began to close until eventually his soul left his body and the Imam became shaheed." Imam Hussein called out, "Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un." He said, "Oh Sister Zainab, Father had appointed you as the keeper of the kafan that was sent from heaven. Bring to me that kafan that was sent for Imam al-Hassan that we may bury him." Sayyidah Zainab must have brought the kafan and asked the question, "Oh brother Hussein, this is the final kafan. Where is your kafan? How will you be buried?" Oh Sayyidah Zainab, that day in Karbala there will be no kafan left for Hussein. But Imam Hassan was someone who prepared for the event of Karbala. In the event of Karbala, there are at least 4 sons of Imam Hassan who are present, who go and they give their sacrifice on behalf of Imam Hassan. But you notice we only speak of one, this Qasim. Why? This Qasim was something unique because of his innocence of how he approached the battlefield. Amongst the Shuhada of Karbala, every Shaheed has his status, but this son of Imam Hassan had the dignity of Imam Hassan in such a way that it was worthy of mentioning that how innocent this Qasim was. When you look and you see the night before Ashura, it is this Qasim who is asking, "Oh uncle, will I too get a chance to present my sacrifice?" A 14-year-old boy who asks, "Will I be able to present my sacrifice?" He's questioned. Imam Hussein questioned him, if you remember. "Oh Qasim, how do you find death near you? Are you interested in shahadat because you see your cousins and your relatives going towards this shahadat? If so, you would give an example that is inappropriate." But Qasim says, "No uncle, this death is sweeter to me than honey. This death did not spare my father, it will not spare you. I will be the one who presents his sacrifice." Imam Hussein said, "Tomorrow, O Qasim, your sacrifice will be accepted and the sacrifice of Asghar will be accepted." The dignity of this Qasim was such, he said, "Oh uncle, will they enter our tents tomorrow?" The ghirat of Qasim could not withstand the idea that one would enter his tents. This son of Imam Hassan, his shahadat is something that is unique. when they describe the shahadat of Imam Hassan's son Qasim, they say he went to the battlefield wearing a long shirt and sandals and the turban of his father. Why do they describe the clothing of Qasim when no other's clothing was described? I'll tell you. Why? Because this Qasim was too small to even have armor to wear. When they describe the clothing of Qasim, they mean to say that this Qasim was not one who went as a warrior. This Qasim was one who went as a child. It was oppression that was done to this child. It was not war that was done against this child. This is why the clothing of Qasim is significant. Why? Because in his shahada, when he calls out, Ammu, come to my aid, uncle, come to help me, and the horses run in the battlefield. Had he had armor, it might have protected his body. But Abu Abdullah says, when I reached my nephew, his insides has been spread across the field of Karbala. Abu Abdullah calls out, how unfortunate is that uncle whose nephew calls him, but he cannot answer. They describe that Abu Abdullah carried this Qasim back, hugging him to his chest. And as Abu Abdullah carried the son of Imam Hassan, they said the feet of Qasim dragged on the feet. But they said Imam Hussein was a man who was completely grown. Qasim was a boy of 14 years. Why would the feet of Qasim drag on the floor? They said one of two things happened. Either Abu Abdullah, at the loss of Qasim, his back became hunched over, or two, the horses had trampled the body of Qasim in such a way that his feet had now hung down on the floor as Abu Abdullah carried him. Oh, the remainder of my brother, you left me in such a condition that how shall I mourn you? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. Raise our hands with tears in our eyes. Ya Allah, 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 Ya Allah. Ya Mahmud بحق محمد, Ya أعلى بحق علي, Ya فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة, Ya محسن بحق الحسن, Ya قديم الأحسان بحق الحسين. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadat from us. Ya Allah, give the thawab of this majlis to the marhumeen of the sponsors of this majlis and all of our marhumeen and all the mu'mineen who are in need of dua. Ya Allah, forgive our sins, cover our flaws. Ya Allah, we have gathered here with hajat. By the mention of Imam al-Mujtaba, fulfill the hajat of the mu'mineen. Ya Allah, give aman to the mu'mineen wherever they are in this world. Ya Allah, give shifa and health to the mu'mineen wherever they are. Keep our children on the upright path of Ali Muhammad. Hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman and entitle us to the shifa of Abu Abdullah in dunya and in akhirah. Matam Hussein.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. बेखता मारा गया सिब्ते रसूले दोसरा वाह हसने सब्ज कबा. बेखता मारा गया सिब्ते रसूले दोसरा वाह हसने सब्ज कबा. बेखता मारा गया सिब्ते रसूले दोसरा वाह हसने सब्ज कबा. जहर से टुकड़े जिगर खून से कफन लाल हुआ वाह हसने सब्ज कबा. बेखता मारा गया सिब्ते रसूले दोसरा वाह हसने सब्ज कबा. खून उगलते हुए भाई को बहन ने देखा और तड़प कर ये कहा, और तड़प कर ये कहा, और तड़प कर ये कहा, तेरी गुर्बत पे ए भाई तेरी ज़ैनब हो फिदा حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن ماں کے دکھ سے ابھی آزاد کہاں تھی زینب ہو گیا کیسا غضب ہو گیا کیسا غضب ہو گیا کیسا غضب باپ زندہ نہ رہا بھائی سوئے خلد چلا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز قبا کر دیے زہر ہلاہل نے جگر کے ٹکڑے اور قاسم کے لیے اور قاسم کے لیے اور قاسم کے لیے کم سنی میں ہے یہ غم شام غریباں جیسا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز گھر سے ایک بار جنازہ جو نکل جاتا ہے کب وہ پھر آتا ہے کب وہ پھر آتا ہے کب وہ پھر ایسا تابوت ہے یہ لوٹ کے جو گھر آیا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز شہ نے اس وقت جو غازی کو نہ روکا ہوتا حشر ہو جاتا بپا حشر ہو جاتا بپا تیر آتے نہ حسن سبز قبا تیر آتے نہ جنازے پہ تمہارے مولا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن قبز قبا شہ کو ریحان برادر کا جگر یاد آیا جب سرے کرب و بلا جب سرے کرب و بلا جب سرے کرب و بلا ٹکڑے قاسم کے اٹھاتے ہوئے مولا نے کہا حسن سبز قبا پہ خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبط رسول دوسرا حسن سبز قبا زہر سے ٹکڑے جگر خون سے کفن لال ہوا حسن سبز قبا یا حسین یا حسین
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر سجاد رو رہے ہیں زینب سے منہ چھپا کر، کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر ایک سمت بے کفن ہے بھائی کا اس کے لاشا، عباس کی بہن کا باقی رہا نہ پردہ، اب سوچتی ہے زینب مانگے کفن یا چادر، کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی بازو کہیں پڑے ہیں لاشا کہیں پڑا ہے، زینب کی بے بسی پر غازی تڑپ رہا ہے، روتی ہے بے کسی بھی فرش عذاب بچھا کر، کیسی یہ شام آئی، پر کیسی شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر اور سجاد سے لپٹ کر کہتی رہی سکینہ، احساس ہو رہا ہے میں ہو گئی یتیمہ، ارے ظالم ڈرا رہا ہے نیزہ دکھا دکھا کر، کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر سجاد سے لپٹ کر کہتی رہی سکینہ، احساس ہو رہا ہے میں ہو گئی یتیمہ، ظالم ڈرا رہا ہے نیزہ دکھا دکھا کر، کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی، الوداعی بن کے خیموں کے درمیان وہ بابا کو ڈھونڈتی تھی، منہ اپنا پیٹ کر یہ فریاد کر رہی ہے، قدموں میں ہی سلا لو بابا مجھے بلا کر، کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی، اولاد سیدہ پر یا حسین امام یا حسن یا حسین، آپ کے امام یا حسن یا حسین، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی شبیر
متوجه الزيارة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله وخاتم النبيين، السلام عليك أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين الشهيد بكربلاء، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم يا 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي الجواد، وعلي بن محمد الهادي، والحسن بن علي العسكري، وحجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك، وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك، وجعلنا من أعوانك والأنصارك والمستشهدين بين يديك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على